Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it. That was a meaty first section.
It was. By the way, DK says Lions, overachiever. Cowboys, underachiever.
That's fine.
Mm,
I don't disagree.
depends on whose expectations that you're looking at as well. I think.
Who's holding the expectation compass?
Yeah. Big Licks Burner. What time do the Cowboys play in the 11th? Oh, wait. Never mind. All
Big
right.
Lick, just make sure and ask that to all the other 30 teams. That's not just a Cowboys problem.
I just want it noted that for people who say we talk about that certain team too much, they only got mentioned because other people have brought them up.
I even had a reference and I held off.
Yep. That topic I am avoiding as much as possible. Big Lick, as we start rapid fire, we just got done talking about overachievers and underachievers. Let's just go with his question before we get to some of this other stuff. Would you say Al Golden overachieved this year?
100%, especially if you ask this specific group of people, because I think there was a lot of people who at the beginning of the season would have told you Al Golden was on the hot seat for whatever reason, and that, his performance didn't live up to expectations the season before. And yeah, they were a top 10 in a lot of defensive categories. I could go through the list of them. And I think as a composite, they were a top 10 defense. And so, yeah, they mightily overachieved this season.
See, I'm not going to go. Well, you're saying the defense mightily overachieved.
Sorry, Al Golden.
I've said all along that the defense was actually better than Al Golden was given credit for.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
In year one. And that they just needed to obviously improve in some specific areas. So did he overachieve? Again, like if you're talking about overall, especially fan expectation, okay, I can get with that. He overachieved based on that. But I still think that the defense, again, was much better in year one than he was given credit for. Just needed to do like better in the red zone, better in some third down stuff, those kind of things. And he obviously flipped all the numbers and turned it into an elite defense. But I do, think that there is something to be said for all those guys having a second year in the system. So, report out today, and I believe Blue and Gold was the one that had it out. The report out there about Riley Leonard having ankle surgery. Jesse, I don't know how closely you follow this. I know this was on our boards at least a week ago. This is not something that we just found out about today. Maybe somebody else did, and I'm not taking shots at other outlets. This is something that we knew about at least a week ago because I know that it was out there. He had the
tightrope.
What do you call it? The tightrope surgery on his ankle. And what the tightrope is, it's a procedure where you drill holes in the bones of your leg and they put this kind of high strength, suture in there and it stabilizes the ankle joint. We obviously all know that he had that high ankle sprain. It is a procedure that helps with high ankle sprains. There are others who have had it. And, he's been on, the reason we knew about it is because, he was seen when classes started a couple of weeks ago with, on crutches, on campus. So it's not like we didn't know about this. It's been out there. And, so the big thing now is how quickly is the recovery process going to be, especially when you get up against spring practice. It is almost February now. So we're within a month or so probably of spring practice getting started. So how much of spring practice is he going to be able to do? What's he going to be able to do during spring practice and that kind of thing? So
yeah, tightrope surgery is literally just like what it sounds like. You tighten that, elasticity between the ankle. It's like if you imagine a rubber band that you've stretched all the way out and it no longer is allowed to go back. That's it. The ankle was kind of stretched out and now they're just tightening it back up. So not overly huge.
Yep. But good point. We are not Marshall. Brock Bowers down at Georgia had it during the season and returned by the end of the season. And he's down there at the Reese's Senior Bowl, I believe, as well. Wasn't he down there? Or was it the East-West Shrine? He was at one of those.
Where the good players go.
Yeah, that's right. Where the good players go. So again, we had it on our boards. We had something about it on our boards a while back. It's funny because just today, one of the blogs aggregated something that Brian put on the boards. And, that is a no-no. You love it when guys who pay for a subscription to the boards grab it and, publish it on some blog outside of Irish Breakdown. Big no-no. Big no-no. Like, come on, man. What are you doing here? Speaking of which, ABCDEF, he was asking about this earlier. What's this BS about Michigan wanting Chad Bowden? So apparently Michigan has thrown a big offer. Sherrone Moore, the new head coach up there, Michigan wants, one thing that Jim Harbaugh was not necessarily doing was killing it with recruiting. It's not that he had horrible recruiting classes, but Michigan wants to up their recruiting, and apparently they have made a big-time offer for Chad Bowden, Notre Dame's recruiting coordinator. So it is now incumbent upon Notre Dame to step up and keep Chad Bowden down here at Notre Dame and not let him go up there, up north to Ann Arbor, because he has been such a huge part of the, renewed recruiting efforts that Marcus Freeman has been able to pull off. Like you talk about, like all these different, things that Notre Dame is doing, from, like playing video games, with the recruits, to the leprechaun outfits and all these different things that are going on. Chad Bowden is, right in the center of all that stuff, and he's a huge part. And so you can't let him walk up north to Michigan. You gotta pony up, and you got to keep him here at Notre Dame. What do you think, Jess?
Yeah, I think that's what it ultimately comes down to, is the money. I think that he wants to stay at Notre Dame. It's just a matter of if Notre Dame is going to put together a respectable offer to kind of essentially match what Michigan has done. But like you said, he's very important and crucial into what Marcus Freeman has done in terms of his recruiting classes since being a head coach at Notre Dame. Obviously, Notre Dame has gotten, they've upped themselves as a recruiting, powerhouse. And I think if you want to continue to be, in that upper echelon in terms of recruiting, you have to keep someone like Chad Bowden around. And if I'm not mistaken, he is a Cincinnati guy that came with Marcus Freeman. So this is, his loyalties remain to Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame, but it's just like, if you don't offer the money, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, I think his preference is to stay at Notre Dame, is what I'm getting at. It's just a matter of if Notre Dame is going to do what's necessary to keep him here.
Well, and Notre Dame is, I don't know how publicly they've talked about it, but there's, at least kind of behind the scenes talk about, like they're trying to set Marcus Freeman up, for big success this year in year 3. And while, like Bowden walking right now is not necessarily going to impact the on-field results in year 3, but it's going to impact what happens in the future. You've got to keep bringing in the big recruits, and I think that they've got a chance to continue to put together some special classes if they're able to keep him. I'm fighting off a sneeze here.
Those were my favorite when I was in class in college, when you get the coughing or sneeze attacks, and it's just like, I'm just going to excuse myself out of this classroom of 100 people.
Yeah, Joe, this is actually a good point. Joe says, "Oh, donors, show him the money." I think that this is a position maybe that is in need of some endowment. What do you think? Like we've got these other coaching positions that are endowed. Get this endowed. Show him the love. Show him the money. Get it done. All right. Speaking of which, who are the expectations higher for in 2024? Sherrone Moore in his first season at Michigan, or Marcus Freeman in year 3 at Notre Dame?
It's got to be Marcus Freeman in year 3 at Notre Dame. Michigan is coming off a national championship. Their head coach just left. There's going to be obvious, regression or letdown, just because unless you win it again next season, it's going to be regression, right? I think if you're Notre Dame, you're going to be in that first year of the expanded playoffs. That is going to open the window to let Marcus Freeman into his first college football playoff berth, which should be the expectation this season, in combination of what's returning on defense, what they've added on offense, and the schedule, at least on paper, for next season, and the relative easiness, I guess you could say, for it. And so I just think it's time for Marcus Freeman to take the next step into the college football playoff realm.
Stymie says Freeman, especially with the schedule, and Tebow at quarterback. I like that. Tebow quarterback. I think that Riley Leonard is a little bit better passer than Tim Tebow, but at least a little bit better passer. But I agree. I think it's Freeman as well, because this is year 3 and he's had 2 years to kind of work out some of the kinks as he's adapted to becoming a head coach. And, like, the free passes are used up at this point. And as you said, between the schedule, the kind of transfers they got coming in, a legitimate championship defense that we just talked about already, that they've got coming back, with all these different things. I mean, it is on. It is college playoff or bust for Marcus Freeman in year 3. Sherrone Moore, I don't know exactly what the leeway is going to be. There's, like, you're definitely at Michigan, riding the wave of that national championship, and you're the favorite son. He got a lot of love, for filling in for those 4 games for
a lot of
Jim
tears.
Harbaugh. Yeah. And all that different stuff. So I think that, he gets a little, I won't say free pass, but he gets a little leeway. He's going to have a new quarterback next year and some other key departures and everything. But, like, when it comes right down to it, I think at the very least, he's got to beat Ohio State next year. Don't you? So I don't know that Michigan, my point is, I don't know that Michigan's fans' expectations are going to drop that far, but I definitely think that there's more on Marcus Freeman in his 3rd year than there is on Sherrone Moore in year 1.
Definitely agree. And I think that Michigan has a much tougher schedule next season as well. So that's also going to play into it. But yeah, Sherrone Moore, I just don't think there's a lot he can do outside of going like 6-6 next season, or you know what I mean? Like, I think like again, it's just going to take a lot for him to be seen as, kind of an underachiever next season.
Circling back a little bit to the Chad Bowden, Anthony says that he is Marcus's Vinny Serrato. That's a great comparison. Vinny, the linchpin guy, director. I don't know if it was called director of recruiting or what exactly it was called when Lou Holtz was the head coach 30 some years ago at this point. But, like early 2000s, everyone was taught, you would hear, like, why can't, can they bring Vinny Serrato back? He was with the Washington Redskins for a long time. And, like, why can't they find another Vinny Serrato kind of guy? Chad Bowden is like, maybe even I won't say a step up at this point, because obviously, those Lou Holtz teams in their peak won a national championship, should have won another national championship, and we're always in that conversation. And they obviously had, high-end elite talent back then. But, like, Bowden is at the very least the next best thing to Vinny Serrato that Notre Dame has had since then. And Andy Saylor asks, any idea the amount of the offer? We don't have any specifics on that, but, like, based on kind of some of the things that I have heard, I would say it's probably somewhere in the ballpark of double what he is getting here, at least double what he is getting here right now. It sounds like
That's
they
payday,
really, really want him up there at Michigan. So you got to pay him. You got to pay, because, again, like, there was Vinny Serrato, and then you went about 30 years before you got a guy like Chad Bowden, and, has been able to make that same kind of impact with recruiting. So those guys obviously don't come around very often. And, he is in lockstep with what the head coach wants, and they're doing great things together. You can't let him walk, especially to a place like Michigan. You can't let a guy leave Notre Dame to go to Michigan and try to basically establish the same kind of thing up there. So hopefully they step up and keep him here. So Notre Dame football released some number changes for a few veterans and numbers for incoming guys today. Jeremiyah Love's going to switch from 12 to 4 on the offense. Jaiden Ausberry is also going to switch to number 4. He had number 23 last year. And Jordan Faison is going to go from 80 to number 5. So which of the switches do you like the best?
I'm going to have to go with Jordan Faison just because 5 is my personal favorite number. And I think it looks good on a slot wide receiver like himself. And so I'm excited to see that. And I think next would be Jeremiyah Love going from 12 to 4. I think that's a pretty cool number as well, but got to go with Faison.
Yeah, I like Faison going. I kind of liked, the little slot receiver wearing a bigger number like 80, but I like the move to 5 as well. Jeremiyah Love, like 12 is a quarterback number, so I like him going to number 4 as well. But I agree. I think overall, Faison is the move, going from 80 to number 5. Early enrollee CJ Carr is going to wear number 12, not his high school number 13, because Duke transfer Riley Leonard is getting that. I don't think there's any surprise there. Vince and I talked about that. I don't think there's any surprise there at all. Like that Riley Leonard, the veteran, gets the number rather than the incoming freshman. Maybe when Riley Leonard's gone, he ends up with it as well. Did you see the screenshot that Drew Tranquill tweeted, his old text exchange from Andy Reid?
I did see that.
He signed with the Chiefs last offseason. Reid told Tranquill, "If you need to talk, my phone is on ring. Till then, see red and think Super Bowl." What do you think about that?
I think that Andy Reid is an extremely confident man. And it just seems like it just seems like the guy at this point is in the last 5 years hasn't made, probably not even 5, like you're going on, maybe 10 years now, 8 years. It all started when, they transitioned out of Alex Smith into Patrick Mahomes. And it just feels like ever since then, he's continuously made the right decision. And I think, having Spagnuolo and his trust in Spagnuolo to put together that defense this season is ultimately it's just a different formula this year. They have, obviously, Patrick Mahomes is tremendous. Travis Kelce has been tremendous, but they've had their fair share of struggles offensively. But the consistent rock this season has been the defense. And in the past, it was kind of like the offense was just going to go out there and hopefully put up enough points, and the defense would hopefully, stop someone here or there. And now it's completely different. And I saw something today that, that the two most successful offenses of recent were whatever the year the Patriots went undefeated and this year's Ravens. And the guy to take down both of those offenses was Spagnuolo, because he was the defensive coordinator for the Giants the year that they beat the Patriots, and eventually go on to win the Super Bowl. So it's just kind of crazy to see, how far that defense has become. And now it's like I said, it is what is winning them games, and not the offense like we're used to.
I think it's pretty underrated, actually, because they've had to win some lower scoring games this season than they're used to scoring. And I mean, the fact that the Chiefs are even in the Super Bowl, like everyone wants to talk about Patrick Mahomes mostly, but I think you're right. The defense played a huge part in it. There were games this year where the Chiefs, there were like multiple games this year. It might have even been like at least 4 straight or something like that, where
the Raiders, the Broncos,
they didn't score in the second half and they still won, and like, look at last week's game against the Ravens. They didn't score in the second half and they still won because of the defense. And Drew Tranquill has been a huge part of it. Like he has been a really,
I would say him and Chris Jones were the defensive MVPs against the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give another Notre Dame player some love, outside of Kyle Hamilton giving up that first touchdown to Travis Kelce, thought that guy was tremendous. I mean, he just
Yeah.
he fills the run, he covers the pass, he blitzes the quarterback. He does it all, and it was just it was great to see two Notre Dame players, Drew Tranquill and Kyle Hamilton, respectively, be the best players on their defenses this past weekend.
Yep. Michael Penix says Alabama's going to win a national championship in Kalen DeBoer's first 3 years. Do you buy or sell it?
This one was a tough one for me because, you start looking at the track record of Kalen DeBoer and his time at Washington, right? Because I believe his first season at Washington was 2021, right? So he spent 3 seasons at Washington. And so what I guess what Penix's logical argument would be is he had 3 seasons at Washington. In his 3rd season, he just fell short to Michigan in the national championship. Now he's going to Alabama. And what I would guess he was trying to say is he's going to have even better talent at Alabama now. So why shouldn't he win it in 3 years? But what Michael Penix is discounting in this equation is himself. There is no Michael Penix at the University of Alabama at the moment.
Not currently.
And I think that's the biggest part of this Kalen DeBoer equation is you got to have an elite quarterback. And that's what's going to win you national championships these days is elite quarterback play. And right now, I don't think Alabama has their dude yet. And so I'm going to have to sell it on that alone. It's hard to strike gold with elite quarterbacks at the college level. And so I'm going to sell this.
Yeah, I sell it as well. And, a couple of different things. One, Nick Saban is gone, like not half the roster, but I think they lost at least 25 guys to the portal. DeBoer is a good coach. He showed that at Washington. Maybe he's able to pull somebody out of the portal, but let's not forget he was able to get Michael Penix because of the connection that they had all the way back to Indiana, when he got him to transfer, from Indiana up there to Washington when DeBoer got the job. So that played a huge part in that. I don't think that there's necessarily anyone like that he had at Washington that he's going to be able to pull down there. And I've talked about this before. Before Nick Saban showed up, there was a long stretch of time where they had real success. 17 years between Alabama national championships and more 500 to sub 500 seasons, than even winning records with a lot of pretty good head coaches down there. So I don't think it's a lock at all. And then you add the layer of, somebody mentioned the fact that, Andy Saylor talking about Georgia, Georgia is ahead of where Alabama is right now. And they didn't just lose half their team to the transfer portal. And you're having extra rounds in the college football playoff that you got to win as well with a guy who had a lightning in a bottle type season at Washington with a lightning in a bottle type quarterback, as you mentioned. So I'm selling this as well. I don't think that it's, could they, I don't even think it's a lock that they're necessarily in the playoffs every year because, they've got a lot of questions to answer before they even get there. I don't think it's like you can just say Alabama's Alabama. You can plug in whatever coach. He's got a lot to prove to get him there. So Dan Patrick says Patrick Mahomes is now in the I'd never bet against Patrick Mahomes phase of his career. Do you buy or sell that?
You know what? I'm going to buy this because Patrick Mahomes is 14-3 in playoff games. He has now put together a full regular season of just playoff games, 17 games, and he is 14-3 in those games. And if you compile his stats, total passing yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and that ratio, only one player has done better than that, and it's been Patrick Mahomes in his own regular season. So what I'm getting at is no one is playing – like Patrick Mahomes is playing even better, and the guy doesn't turn the ball over in the playoffs.
Right.
He's playing even better in the playoffs with a 14-3 record in his career. No, like I am not going to bet against him, and he is the reason why I won a fair share of some bets over the weekend because I was eating up that Chiefs underdogs money line all weekend. And so, yeah, I don't think you can bet against him.
We Are ND for Life says Mahomes lost to the Raiders. Well, he's
I
also in the Super
think
Bowl,
once
though.
you hit the playoffs, though, it's different. Like, I don't think
Right.
you can bet against Mahomes in the playoffs.
That's the only two guys he's lost to in the playoffs are Joe Burrow
And
and Tom
Brady.
Brady.
And
In
one
the
of them
Super
was in
Bowl and the AFC
overtime.
Championship. Like, what they had to win a different way this year. They only got one home playoff game this year. Like, this is the first time they had ever had to play away from Arrowhead Stadium. They went on the road. They beat Josh Allen and Buffalo, everybody's darling, Josh Allen and Buffalo. Like, they got to host that game and they still couldn't beat Patrick Mahomes. And then they go to Baltimore with everything that was supposed to be against them with the number one seed, and they win again. Like, it is, to me, it's kind of hard to say. If he wins this Super Bowl, I would definitely, kind of call this a big buy, a big lock. Because remember, they did have to come from behind to win that Super Bowl against the 49ers the first time. But, again, like, that's why you don't bet against him, I guess, because when it counts, he's out there making plays. So they've had to win a completely different way this time. And the guy is, if he's done with his career right now, he's already in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
So,
it's insane. He played the best defense he's going to play last week. Like, the 49ers defense is not going to be as good as the Ravens. They've actually been really bad as of recent. And just I can't let that Josh Allen comment slip through the crack. I just don't quite understand why Josh Allen gets to be the quarterback that always gets the excuse in the NFL. Is it because he's playing Mahomes? Is that it? Is Mahomes so great that we just give Josh Allen an excuse now? It's just, I feel like anytime there's Josh Allen shortcomings compared to other quarterbacks, it's, oh, well, this or that. I don't know. I'm just kind of tired of it.
Yeah. We are ND for Life. Can he beat Mr. Irrelevant, though?
We'll see.
I wouldn't bet against him. That was the whole question, right? Your buddy Brent would tell you,
oh,
no,
man.
He can't. He was in here yesterday. I don't know if maybe like Tuesdays are his conflict. He likes to come in on Mondays chiming in, but you're not here most of the time.
I'm so glad.
So after Sunday's NFC Championship game loss to the 49ers, Lions head coach Dan Campbell said, "This may have been our only shot." Some people have taken exception to the remark. What do you think about it?
When I first kind of heard it, I kind of was like, huh? But then it made sense the more that I thought about it. I think what he was trying to convey is, as a fan base, with this success this season, your expectation can't be the same, if not more, for next season. And ultimately what he's getting at is yeah, he's a realist in the fact that, it takes a lot to get to the point of where they were. A lot of things have to come together. A lot of things have to, a lot of guys have to stay healthy. I don't think he's saying that the goal isn't, to get back there. I think he's just trying to say, like, you only get one shot sometimes. Nothing is never guaranteed again, right? Like, there is an option that in this thing where the Lions never get back there again, or they have to wait 30 more years again, right? And so I just think that that's what he was trying to get at.
Yeah, I get like what Indy Saylor is saying. A coach should never say that. But look, I think look at TCU. We talked about TCU last year. TCU was in the national championship game a year ago. They were 5-7 this year. Now, the odds of the Lions falling that far off are remote, but look at last year's Eagles team in the Super Bowl and look at where they ended up getting bounced out by the Buccaneers in the first round of the playoffs this year. I think, he's looking at it realistically, like there are no guarantees. You have to, you have to work like hell just to get to that point. And then to get there again and go even farther, you have to work even harder. I think that's the biggest thing that he's saying is just there are no guarantees that you're going to get to this point again. How many teams, because, again, like look at the Eagles as an example. As good as the Eagles were, they almost won a Super Bowl and They were, a lot of people's pick to get back there again, but they like the NFL. It's tough, man, winning week in and week out, and to get, just to get back to that point. There are very few teams, there's a reason why so few losing teams get back to the Super Bowl the next year. I think like Brady's Patriots are the only team in something like the last 20 years or something like that to lose a Super Bowl and then come back and, get to the Super Bowl the next year. It's tough. Tough to repeat. Tough to continue success. I think that's his biggest point. Fill in the blank. An Associated Press writer tweeted this. With the 49ers and Chiefs having no Alabama players on active roster, a remarkable streak will continue. No player who finished college at Alabama has scored a point in a Super Bowl. Players from 143 other colleges, from the Coast Guard to Miami, have scored in Super Bowl. And it's blank, Jesse, that Alabama fans are triggered because quarterbacks like Bart Starr and Ken Stabler throwing touchdown passes, they think it should count toward what this guy was tweeting about.
It is complete and utterness stupidity that Alabama fans think that players like this should count. And I'll keep this one simple. The answer is simple. All the other teams are not counting their quarterbacks either. And so if everyone is not counting it, then what does it matter, right? Because then it's still, that's the common denominator in this whole thing, is that quarterbacks don't count. And so if it's not counted for everyone, then it shouldn't count for Alabama. And so I just think it's quite remarkable that a program of the national championships, the players that they put into the NFL,
score the touchdowns. That's what it comes down to.
They're not a running back or a wide receiver.
Right. That's not what his tweet was about. They didn't literally score the touchdown. Yeah, they threw touchdowns,
and
but they didn't literally score it. And that's a crazy stat.
Just because all the Alabama players are so good and they just get drafted so high that they go to these bad teams that never make the Super Bowl. Maybe that it has to be the theory.
It's got to have something to do with it, I think. But I think Sean Alexander, when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl the first time, was the running back then. He was in the Super Bowl, didn't score a touchdown. Man, Salty, you're cutting deep.
Man, I saw that.
Look how hard it is to have a good IB Sports Talk show the night after a good.
This is in reference to we're not guaranteed to get back to this point.
Right. And then, of course, our old friend DK. Why do Dallas fans hate Josh Allen so much? I will tell you from my personal why I don't care that much. It's not like I hate Josh Allen. All anyone talked about, I'll use this as an example. Does Dak Prescott, have his liabilities? Yes, Dak Prescott has his liabilities. All anyone wanted to talk about last offseason was the fact that Dak Prescott led the NFL with interceptions, right? Well, Josh Allen, from what is it, 6 years, 5 years he's been in the NFL now. I think this was year 6. Since he has been in the NFL, he leads the entire NFL in total turnovers.
And last year, in the NFL. This last season.
Right. But that is not talked about to the degree that, again, using that as an example, like the Dak thing, if Josh Allen was in Dallas, he would be a much more polarizing figure. But because he's the Buffalo Bills quarterback and he plays for a largely irrelevant team, he doesn't get near the criticism I think that he deserves. I think he deserves much more criticism than he gets, and he only doesn't get it because he plays in a small market like Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's what irks me about Josh Allen.
Josh Allen, again, he only gets celebrated for his good things.
Yes, I'm jealous that he's beating Dak in that category, DK. Touche. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate everyone being here. As always, had fun, even with Salty, who rallied and came back around at the end. And again, Tommy, hope everything goes well for you. Keep us updated on how you're doing out there on I-70. Hope things go well for you. And it sounded like, at least, not hurt or anything like that. So appreciate you. Hit that like button, and of course, subscribe, rate, and review. And we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.